So I've been asked several times. People ask me all the time about, perfect amino and if they should take them, and if I, think they're great. Uh, I haven't really looked at their product that much because their entire ad campaign is a lie, and that irritates me. So, and they should know, and especially like guys like Gary Breck have to know. So their ad campaign is just two sentences. It's protein turns to sugar, sugar turns to fat, or sugar makes you fat. Both are true. However, when you put them side by side like that, the inference is that protein will make you fat, which is not chemically going to happen. Brecca knows that. The Perfect Amino guys know that. But that's still their ad campaign because they're hoping that nobody else knows that. And if they're willing to lie about something that can, that's as obvious as that and as fundamental as the biochemistry that they're selling everything on, they're probably willing to lie on anything else and cut corners and use inferior products and, do all sorts of stuff in it that's not, I wouldn't consider beneficial. So to understand how that all functionally works, you have to kind of go through the chemistry, and which is kind of funny because this is the whole chemistry that fixes diabetes and fixes dementia. So it's a pretty important pathway. But what happens as far as the sugar protein turning to sugar, what happens is that if your body's running on sugar, so when your blood always does, but as the levels of sugar that can be converted into energy start to dip, or as the text says, as glycolytic ATP levels start to fall, what ends up happening is it puts pressure on the alpha cells of the pancreas. The beta cells are where it produces insulin. The alpha cells produce a hormone called glucagon. Glucagon's job is to raise sugar levels in the blood. Insulin's job is to lower sugar levels. So glucagon is produced. The production of glucagon tells your liver to start grabbing some protein, whether it's from whatever you ate or muscle tissue in your body, and break it down and turn it into sugar through a process called gluconeogenesis. That process is pretty cool, but I can read you all the chemistry, but that's irrelevant for today. What ends up happening is that it starts making sugar out of protein. So yeah, protein does turn into sugar. However, as those sugar levels start to rise in your blood, what ends up happening is that as they get to a certain point, they start kicking off insulin. As insulin starts to come off, it comes up, it immediately shuts off glucagon. And so the production of protein to sugar immediately stops. And so what ends up happening is that you never have enough sugar in the blood for the insulin to store it as fat. Because what has to happen is that first the sugar goes into muscles as glycogen, that's where it's stored first. Sugar is then stored in the liver as glycogen. Then whatever's left over is turned to fat. Well, if your blood levels of glucose start to drop to the point where they're low, that means that you've kind of exhausted the rest of the body. So this usually happens after an intense workout or a long fasting period. So what ends up happening is that as the sugars start coming back up and your blood goes, that's good, we have enough for us, because your blood has to run on sugar. Then what ends up happening is that it shuts off the production of sugar because there's no reason to continually tear down your muscle tissues and overload the blood with sugar, because sugar is toxic to your body after a certain point. So that's what's going on. So the idea that your body will take protein, tear it apart, turn it into sugar to the point where you have so much in your blood that you have this giant insulin spike that then pushes all that sugar into the muscle tissues until the muscles are full, then goes and fills the liver up until it's full, then still has enough sugar, continually make sugar to the point where your body then has to turn it into fat, is never going to happen. It's highly pathological. You would be dead if that happened. So it's never going to happen. And so when a company comes out and they utilize obviously biochemically false narratives to drive and sell their product, I have to assume that they're willing to lie about anything else and anybody else around it. So that's why I'm not a big fan of Perfect Amino. Plus, the thing is that it is hypercritical that your body be able to do that. If it doesn't, you die. So if you've made a product, if you've chemically altered the protein or an amino acid structure to the point where it won't allow that, I would never take that product. Now, if it's just amino acids, so your body uses the protein spine from proteins to do this. It doesn't necessarily just use the amino acids, but amino acids have been known to kick off the process. So if they've chemically altered their amino acids so that it will not kick off gluconeogenesis, I definitely don't want that product in my body. But I don't think that's what they did. I think it's just normal collagen, or just collagen aminos, and they're just hoping that nobody knows the chemistry and no one's going to figure out their lie, and people will get scared and not take whey protein and take their stuff instead. That's especially because they got Gary Brecken to come out and be like, "You guys support this message." So that's my issue with Perfect Amino. If you guys are taking it, you're getting great results, fantastic. I just don't want to support a company that's willing to lie to you. That's kind of where I am. I'll take a look at it. If they drop that ad campaign, I'll take a look at it. And if it's still great, then maybe. If they're willing to come out and be like, okay, we shouldn't have done that, we'll move on. I don't have a problem with it. Everybody makes mistakes. But that's the reason. So many of you guys have asked. That's the reason why I'm not a big fan of it. You definitely want your body to be able to turn proteins into sugars. Otherwise, your body's going to rip apart your muscle tissue. So like the whole idea of taking collagen or bone broth or something like that, instead of, before you do fasting exercise or after you do fasting exercise, to ensure that your body doesn't tear apart your muscle tissues to make the sugar it has to have for your blood. So apparently Pure Aminos doesn't satisfy that function. So I wouldn't, that's a really important thing that you need to do so you save your muscle tissue. I'm not super concerned about that, but at the end of the day, that's why I'm not a big fan of Pure Amino. If you guys have any questions, drop them in the comments or send it to questions@chalmerswellness.com. You guys have a great day. Thanks for your time.